I stared at the divorce papers on our kitchen table, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from rage. Next to them lay a brochure for a wellness retreat, Patricia's latest attempt to convince everyone I needed help. "It's for your own good, Emma," my husband Mark said, his voice carrying that practiced concern his mother had perfected. "Mom found this place. They specialize in entrepreneurial delusions." Entrepreneurial delusions. That's what they called my work for the past 2 years. The late nights coding, the meetings with investors, the careful planning, all dismissed as symptoms of some imagined breakdown. "The doctors there can help you accept a normal life," he continued. Mom says, Mom thinks, Mom found." I cut him off. "When was the last time you had an original thought that didn't come from Patricia?" He flinched. 3 years ago, before Patricia moved in temporarily after her divorce, Mark would have supported my dreams. He was the one who'd encouraged me to learn coding in the first place. "You've changed, Emma. These fantasies about being some tech mogul, the secretive phone calls, the separate bank account Mom found, that your mother found by snooping through my things?" I stood up, anger finally boiling over. "Did she also tell you why she was going through my office while we were at work?" "She's worried about you. We all are." He pushed the divorce papers toward me. "If you don't agree to get help, I don't see how we can continue." I picked up the papers, scanning the terms Patricia had undoubtedly helped draft. They wanted full control of our assets until I was stable. They wanted me to attend 6 months of therapy with Patricia's chosen doctor. They wanted to erase everything I built. What perfect timing. "You know what?" I pulled out my phone and checked the time. "Let's call your mother. She should be here for this." "Emma." "Call her, Mark. Now." Something in my voice made him comply. 20 minutes later, Patricia swept in wearing her signature Chanel suit and disapproving expression. "Oh, Emma," she sighed dramatically, finally ready to accept help. I walked to our home office and retrieved a folder I'd been saving for a special occasion. "Actually, Patricia, I'm ready to tell the truth." "We know the truth," she said smoothly. "Your paranoid secretiveness, your obsession with this imaginary company." Imaginary. I pulled out my phone again and opened my banking app. "Mark, what's the balance of our joint account?" He frowned. $42,000. "And you froze it last week on your mother's advice, right? To protect our assets?" I turned the phone toward them. "Now look at my personal account." Their eyes widened. Mark stumbled back. Patricia grabbed the phone. This is impossible," she sputtered. $43 million? $43,600,000 to be exact. I opened the folder. "Would you like to see the transfer receipt from Google? They bought my security encryption app last month." Mark collapsed into a chair. "But your company wasn't real." Mom said a lot of things. I laid out more documents. "Remember those suspicious meetings, venture capitalists, those late night calls, my development team in Singapore, that concerning separate account, my initial seed money from angel investors." Patricia's face had gone from shock to calculating. "Darling, we only wanted to control me, to convince Mark I was crazy, to force me into some retreat that would give you power of attorney." I smiled. "Check tomorrow's Forbes, Patricia. I'm on the cover." Mark was reading through the documents, his face ashen. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried. For months I tried. But every time I mentioned my work, your mother convinced you it was a sign of instability." I took back my phone. "Besides, Google required absolute secrecy during negotiations." "But now you can come home," Patricia said quickly. "Focus on your marriage, start a family." "Now I can do whatever I want." I picked up the divorce papers, including saying no to these. "Emma, please," Mark stood. "I didn't know. We can fix this." "Can we? 2 hours ago, you were ready to commit me because your mother said so. You froze our accounts, invaded my privacy, and dismissed everything I've worked for as delusions." "I was worried about you." "No, you were worried about what your mother told you to worry about." I gathered my documents. "The funny thing is, I was going to surprise you next week. Take you on that dream vacation you always wanted. Buy us a house away from Patricia's influence. Give us a fresh start." Patricia's expression shifted. "Darling, I'm sure we can." "Save it." I held up my hand. "I've already called the lawyer, a good one. She'll be sending over my own divorce terms tomorrow." You can't just walk away, Patricia protested. Think about what people will say. I laughed. People will say your son divorced a successful tech entrepreneur because his mother convinced him she was crazy. How do you think that story will play in your social circles? Mark reached for me. Emma, I love you. No, I said softly. You love who your mother lets me be, and that's not enough anymore. My phone buzzed, a notification that the Forbes article had just gone live. Perfect timing indeed. I have a board meeting in the morning, I said, gathering my coat. My lawyers will be in touch about the divorce. Oh, and Patricia, the wellness retreat you recommended. I bought it this morning. I'm turning it into a tech incubator for women entrepreneurs. I left them standing in the kitchen with their shattered assumptions. As I drove away, my phone kept buzzing with notifications, colleagues congratulating me on the Forbes article, investors eager to back my next venture, and one very interesting message from Patricia's ex-husband about why their marriage really ended. But those were problems for tomorrow. Tonight, I had a celebration dinner with my development team, the people who have believed in me, supported me, and never once called me unstable for daring to dream big. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success so massive it makes your doubters doubt themselves. And I was just getting started. The Forbes article went viral overnight. By morning, my phone had exploded with messages from old friends, distant relatives, and suddenly interested investors. But the most interesting message came from Robert Churchill, Patricia's ex-husband. I saw the article. His email read, "We should talk about what really happened to Churchill Technologies 15 years ago. I was in my new office, overlooking Seattle's skyline, when my assistant announced Patricia's arrival, right on schedule. I'm not taking any meetings today, Claire," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Mrs. Peterson is quite insistent," Claire replied, barely concealing her smirk. "She says it's about family." Family? I finally looked up. "Show her in. This should be entertaining." Patricia swept in wearing her most expensive outfit, carrying what I recognized as a $30,000 Birkin bag. New purchase, probably made this morning to impress me. "Emma, darling," she gushed. "You look wonderful. Success clearly agrees with you." Cut to the chase, Patricia. "What do you want?" She settled into a chair, arranging herself carefully. "I've been doing some thinking. Perhaps I was hasty in my assessment of your business acumen." Hasty? I pulled up a file on my computer. "You told Mark's entire family I was having a psychiatric break. You convinced my own husband to freeze our assets. You tried to have me committed." Water under the bridge, she waved dismissively. "I'm here to make things right, to unite the family." I laughed. "By family, you mean access to my money." Her smile tightened. "I simply think we should put aside our differences. Mark is devastated. He misses you. Mark misses his comfortable life, and you miss controlling it." I turned my screen toward her. "Speaking of control, want to explain these documents Robert sent me?" The color drained from her face. "You've spoken to Robert? About how you orchestrated his removal from his own company? About the forged signatures? The mysterious board votes?" I smiled. "He's been quite informative." "Those are lies," she hissed, her mask slipping. "Robert was unstable. Your favorite accusation. Unfortunately for you, Robert kept proof. And now I have it." She gripped her Birkin tighter. "What do you want?" "Want? I have everything I want. $43 million, a successful company, and freedom from your manipulation." I stood up. "What I'm going to do is help Robert reclaim what you stole." "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." I pressed my intercom. "Claire, please show Mrs. Peterson out. And send in the SEC investigators who've been waiting." Patricia's eyes widened as two federal agents entered. "You can't do this to me." "Actually, I can, and I am." I sat back down. "Goodbye, Patricia." As they let her out, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Can we talk? Please?" I stared at it for a long moment before replying. "My lawyer will contact yours." That evening, I met Robert Churchill for dinner. He was nothing like Patricia's descriptions of a mentally unstable failure. He was sharp, focused, and had kept meticulous records of everything she'd done. "She did the same thing to you," he said, spreading documents across our private dining room table. "Isolated you, called you unstable, used your husband as a weapon." "But why?" "She had money from your divorce settlement." "Patricia doesn't want money. She wants control. He sighed. I should have warned your husband years ago. Mark made his choice. I examined a particularly damning document. Multiple choices, actually. And now? I smiled. Now we make ours. The next week was a whirlwind. Robert's evidence, combined with my resources, led to a full investigation of Patricia's activities. Churchill Technologies' original board members were contacted. Old votes were scrutinized. Paper trails were followed. Mark tried calling daily, leaving increasingly desperate messages about love and forgiveness. I let them all go to voicemail. Then Patricia made her final mistake. Did you see this? Claire rushed into my office with a tablet. A local news site was running a story. Tech CEO's mental health crisis. A mother's concern. Patricia had given an interview, playing the worried mother-in-law card. She painted me as a troubled woman who'd gotten lucky with one app, but was spiraling into paranoid delusions. I called Robert immediately. Change of plans. We're going nuclear. 2 days later, every major tech publication ran the real story. How Patricia had orchestrated the hostile takeover of Churchill Technologies, how she'd used the same playbook of manipulation and gaslighting multiple times, and how her own son had enabled her latest attempt at control. The evidence was overwhelming. Robert's documents, board member testimonies, Mark's signed statements agreeing to have me committed. Even Patricia's therapist friend admitted to agreeing to diagnose me without ever meeting me. Patricia's social circle evaporated overnight. Mark's law firm put him on indefinite leave, and Churchill Technologies' original board voted unanimously to restore Robert as CEO. Karma, Claire remarked, dropping off more congratulatory flowers from investors. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mark. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I understand everything now. Can we meet? Just once. This time I agreed. We met in our old favorite coffee shop. He looked terrible, unshaven, tired, broken. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know it's not enough, but I am so sorry. Why did you do it? I asked the question that had haunted me. Why didn't you trust me? Because I was weak. Because it was easier to believe Mom than to stand up to her. He stared into his untouched coffee. Because I was afraid of losing her approval more than I was afraid of losing you. And now I've lost everything. Not everything, I said softly. You've gained something valuable. What's that? The truth about yourself. Use it wisely. I stood up. Goodbye, Mark. As I walked out, I felt lighter. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted leads you exactly where you need to be. Robert and I launched a foundation for entrepreneurs facing domestic manipulation. Patricia's wellness retreat became a thriving innovation center. And Mark started therapy, real therapy this time. Success isn't just about money. It's about writing your own story, even when others try to cast you as the villain. And sometimes the happy ending isn't getting back what you lost. It's realizing you found something better. 1 year later, I sat in the auditorium of what used to be Patricia's wellness retreat, now transformed into the Bennett Innovation Center. 300 women entrepreneurs filled the seats, each with a story of someone trying to dim their light. Success isn't just about profits, I told them during my keynote speech. It's about breaking cycles. It's about showing others what's possible. In the back row, I spotted Robert with his new wife, Sarah, a brilliant software engineer who'd helped us rebuild Churchill Technologies. Next to them sat Mark, looking healthier after a year of real therapy and personal growth. He asked to attend today. His first email in 6 months had been simple. I want to understand what Mom prevented me from seeing. After the speech during the networking reception, he approached me. That was incredible, he said, keeping a respectful distance. The work you're doing here, it's changing lives. That's the point. I sipped my champagne. How's the support group going? He'd started a group for people recovering from parental manipulation. Ironic, considering our past, but genuine progress rarely follows a straight line. It's helping. We have 20 members now. He hesitated. Mom tried to contact me last week. Oh, I kept my voice neutral, though my grip on the glass tightened. She's in Arizona. Says she's changed. Wants to reconcile. He smiled sadly. I told her to send any communications through my therapist. Progress. Yeah. He looked around the renovated space. Remember when she wanted to send you here? And now you're using it to empower the very people she tried to silence. It's poetic. A young woman approached us, clutching a tablet. Mrs. Bennett, your 4 o'clock is here. The investors from Singapore. Thank you, Jessica. I turned back to Mark. Duty calls. Emma? He called as I started to walk away. Thank you for showing me what strength really looks like. I nodded and headed to my meeting, my heels clicking on the marble floors that once might have housed my prison. Now they carried me to new opportunities, new ventures, new heights. The Singapore investors wanted to expand our incubator program globally. As I walked them through the proposal, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Patricia Peterson faces federal charges in Churchill Technologies case. Finally, Robert's evidence had done its job. The carefully documented paper trail of forgery, fraud, and manipulation had caught up with her. The society maven who tried to commit me was now facing commitment of a different kind to a federal institution. After the meeting, I found Robert and Sarah in my office. Did you see? Robert asked, holding up his phone with the same news alert. Justice takes time, Sarah remarked, but it usually arrives. Speaking of justice, I pulled out a folder. The board approved your proposal. Churchill Technologies is officially returning to its original mission, funding innovative startups that other companies overlook. Robert's eyes misted. The company my father built, finally back on track. With some upgrades, Sarah added, squeezing his hand. We're focusing on founders who've been told they're unstable for daring to dream big. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mark. Mom's calling everyone, crying about persecution. I blocked her number, moving forward, not back. Progress indeed. That evening, I stood in my office, watching the sunset paint Seattle's skyline in shades of possibility. My assistant brought in the latest applications for our incubator program. There's one you should see first, Claire said, pulling out a particular file. Her mother-in-law had her committed for erratic behavior when she tried to patent her medical device. The device just got FDA approval. I smiled. Get her in here tomorrow, and send her the Forbes article about my story. Already did. Claire grinned. She cried, said she finally felt seen. That's what it was all about, really, not the money, not the revenge, but the chance to turn pain into purpose, to transform wellness retreats into launching pads for dreams. My phone buzzed one final time that day, an email from Patricia's prison account. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I typed back 3 words. I am. Goodbye, Patricia. Then I turned back to the applications, to the women waiting to rise, to the dreams waiting to soar. Tomorrow, we'd help another founder break free. Next week, we'd launch another company. Next month, we'd open another innovation center. Mark's support group would keep growing. Robert and Sarah would keep rebuilding Churchill Technologies. And I would keep turning unstable into unstoppable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's using that success to ensure no one else has to fight the battles you fought alone. As I left the office that night, I passed the plaque we'd mounted in the lobby. It read, "To every woman who's been called crazy for chasing her dreams, chase them here." Below it in smaller letters, in memory of all the dreams Patricia Peterson tried to kill, they grew stronger in the dark. Sometimes happy endings aren't about getting back what you lost. They're about building something so magnificent that your scars become stepping stones, your pain becomes purpose, and your story becomes someone else's survival guide. And that's worth more than all the Birkin bags in the world. I stood in my penthouse office overlooking Manhattan's skyline, examining the final mock-up of tomorrow's event invitations. Rose and pearl luxury cosmetics. A new era begins was embossed in gold on cream cardstock. Fitting, since I was about to transform the stagnant luxury brand into something extraordinary. My phone buzzed with another condescending text from Victoria Rose, my mother-in-law. Darling, it's not too late to cancel this little soiree. Real business leaders don't throw parties like a teenager who just got her first paycheck. If only she knew that while she was busy criticizing my little party, I'd spent the last year secretly acquiring shares of her family's company through various shell corporations. Tomorrow, her precious Rose and Pearl cosmetics would officially be mine. Miss Sullivan. My assistant Kate appeared at the door. The event planners need final approval on the presentation sequence. I kept my maiden name specifically for this moment. Tomorrow, Sullivan Beauty Labs would officially merge with Rose and Pearl. creating the largest luxury beauty conglomerate on the East Coast. Has Mrs. Rose confirmed her attendance? I asked, already knowing the answer. No, she's hosting a competing charity dinner. She's convinced half the board members to attend her event instead. I smiled. Perfect. Let them enjoy their last night of blissful ignorance. My husband James called as I was reviewing the merger documents. Olivia, Mom's really upset about this party. Maybe we should just do something smaller. 3 years of marriage and he still defaulted to his mother's opinions. The invitations are sent, James. Everything's arranged. But Mom says it's embarrassing. A serious CEO wouldn't. I'll see you tomorrow. I cut him off. Don't be late. The truth was, James had no idea I'd built Sullivan Beauty Labs from a small startup into a powerhouse over the last 5 years. He thought I was just playing at business, just like his mother did. Neither of them noticed when I started acquiring their company's shares or when I began poaching their top researchers. Victoria had been too busy planning James's eventual succession to notice her empire crumbling. She still thought her son would inherit everything despite his complete lack of business acumen or interest in the beauty industry. The next evening, I stood in the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom, overseeing the final preparations. The stage was set with 2 massive screens currently showing the Rose and Pearl logo. In an hour, that logo would change to reveal the new merged brand. Mrs. Rose is live posting from her charity dinner, Kate reported, showing me Victoria's social media updates. She's calling this event a desperate attempt at attention from an amateur. Is everything ready with the SEC filing? Yes. The moment you make the announcement, it goes public. The ballroom began filling with guests, beauty industry executives, fashion editors, influencers, and most importantly, Rose and Pearl's major stockholders. The ones Victoria hadn't managed to divert to her charity dinner. Your numbers for the last quarter were impressive. Robert Chen, one of Rose and Pearl's biggest investors, approached me. Very impressive. Wait until you see what's next. I smiled, knowing he'd already agreed to the merger weeks ago. At exactly 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. I took the stage, feeling the weight of the moment. Welcome to a new era in luxury beauty, I began. The ballroom doors burst open. Victoria Rose stood there in her designer gown. James behind her, both looking flushed. Sorry to crash your little party, Victoria announced loudly, but I thought it was time someone taught you about real business. Perfect timing. Actually, Mrs. Rose, I smiled, you're just in time for a lesson of your own. The screens behind me changed, showing the merger announcement. Victoria's face went from smug to shocked as she read the headlines. As of this moment, I continued, Sullivan Beauty Labs and Rose and Pearl Cosmetics have merged to create Sullivan Rose Beauty Group. I'd like to thank our majority shareholders for their support in this acquisition. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Victoria grabbed James's arm. This is impossible. We own controlling shares. You owned, I corrected. Past tense. While you were busy mocking my business acumen, I was buying your company. Rather efficiently, I might add. Robert Chen stood up. The board voted unanimously this morning. The merger is complete. Victoria's perfectly made-up face contorted. James, did you know about this? My husband looked as shocked as his mother. Olivia, what have you done? Created a billion-dollar beauty empire, I answered. One that will actually innovate instead of riding on a 50-year-old reputation. The screens changed again, showing the new product lines, research facilities, and global expansion plans I've been developing. Rose and Pearl has been stagnant for years, I told the room. Relying on the same formulas, the same marketing, the same tired luxury narrative. Starting tomorrow, we revolutionize everything. Victoria marched toward the stage. You can't just. I already have. I held up my phone, showing her the SEC filing confirmation. Your charity dinner guests should be getting the news right about now. James finally found his voice. But I was supposed to inherit a company you know nothing about. I turned to him. When was the last time you even visited the labs? Met with the research team? Checked the quarterly reports? Victoria's face had gone from red to white. This is a hostile takeover. No, this is good business. Something you might recognize if you spent less time planning charity dinners and more time innovating your product line. The room was silent, watching the drama unfold. I turned back to the audience. Tomorrow we begin a new chapter. One where merit trumps legacy, innovation beats tradition, and real business acumen matters more than family names. As applause filled the room, I watched Victoria pull out her phone, presumably to call her lawyers. But we both knew it was too late. Sometimes, the best response to being called childish is to show them just how grown up you can be. The morning after my announcement, I arrived at Rose and Pearl's flagship office building in Manhattan. By noon, the iconic gold lettering in the lobby would be replaced with Sullivan Rose Beauty Group. Victoria's portrait, which had dominated the entrance for 2 decades, was already being carefully removed. Mrs. Sullivan, the head of security, approached. Mrs. Rose is demanding entry to her office. She's in the lobby with her legal team. Right on schedule. I found Victoria surrounded by 3 expensive-looking lawyers, all visibly uncomfortable. She had clearly dragged them straight from their country club breakfast. "You can't lock me out of my own building," she declared, waving a manicured finger. "Actually, the merger agreement specifically outlines the transition of executive offices," I said, holding up a document. "Your personal items will be packed and delivered to your residence by this evening." "This is my company." "Was," I corrected. "The shareholders' agreement is quite clear. You haven't had controlling interests since last quarter." One of her lawyers whispered something in her ear. Her face reddened. "Where's James? What have you done to my son?" "Your son is currently meeting with HR about his future role in the company," I said, checking my watch. "If he wants one." Victoria's lawyers huddled together, frantically reviewing documents on their tablets. They already knew what they'd find. My team had spent months making this takeover ironclad. "The board meeting is in an hour," I informed them. "You're welcome to attend, Mrs. Rose. As a minority shareholder, you still have that right." She straightened her channel jacket. "Oh, I'll be there, and you'll regret this little power play." The boardroom already looked different. Gone were the dark wood panels and heavy curtains Victoria had insisted on. The space was now modern and bright, with digital displays showing real-time market data and research metrics. James sat in his usual seat, looking lost without his mother at the head of the table. The board members who had attended Victoria's charity dinner instead of my announcement were trying very hard not to make eye contact with anyone. "Let's begin," I said, taking my place at the head of the table. "First quarter projections under the merger." "This is absurd." Victoria burst in, her lawyers trailing behind. "I demand we discuss this hostile takeover." "The takeover was approved by majority shareholders." Robert Chen spoke up. "The vote was unanimous." "Because she manipulated the stock." "Because I showed them actual innovation." I interrupted, pulling up the presentation slides. "New formula patents. International expansion plans. A complete modernization of our manufacturing process." The screens filled with graphs, projections, and most importantly, profit forecasts that made several board members sit up straighter. "While you were planning galas," I continued, "I was developing next-generation beauty technology. While you were protecting your son's inheritance, I was securing partnerships with sustainable suppliers and innovative researchers. Our traditional methods are costing us market share every quarter." I switched to the competition analysis. "We've fallen behind 3 major competitors in the past year alone. Our product line hasn't seen significant innovation in 5 years." The board members were now actively avoiding Victoria's gaze. Numbers didn't lie. And these numbers told a story of a company in desperate need of change. "Now," I said, pulling up the next slide, "let's discuss the rebranding timeline." "James," Victoria turned to her son. "Say something." James looked at the profit projections, then at me. For the first time, I saw something like respect in his eyes. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked quietly. "Since the day you told me I was cute for wanting to modernize your mother's company," I replied, meeting his gaze. "Since the day Victoria said I should focus on planning dinner parties instead of business strategies." Victoria sank into a chair. "You've destroyed my legacy." "No, I've saved it." Rose and Pearl was 3 years away from being obsolete. Now it's going to lead the industry into the next decade. "Mrs. Sullivan," my assistant interrupted. "The press is ready for the official announcement." Victoria stood up. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I handed her lawyers another document. "Your non-compete agreement. Standard in all executive transitions." She stared at the paper. "You expect me to sign this?" I expect you to read the terms of your golden parachute very carefully. It's quite generous, provided you cooperate with the transition." Her lawyers leaned in, whispering urgently. She sat back down, defeated. "James," I turned to my husband. "You have a choice to make. You can stay and learn the business properly, starting from product development, or you can take the severance package. Either way, you'll need to decide who you want to be, your mother's son or your own man." The boardroom was silent as James looked between his mother and me. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. "I want to learn, really learn from the ground up." Victoria gasped. "James?" "No, Mom. Olivia's right. I never earned my position here. It's time I did." I nodded. "Report to R&D tomorrow morning. You'll start by understanding our products, not just wearing our name." As the board meeting continued, I watched Victoria sign the non-compete agreement with shaking hands. Her era was over, and she knew it. By evening, her portrait in the lobby had been replaced with a digital display showcasing our new product line. The company she guarded so jealously was transforming before her eyes. Sometimes the best way to save a legacy is to completely reinvent it. 3 months after the takeover, I studied the latest sales reports in what used to be Victoria's office. Our first product launch under the new brand had exceeded projections by 200%. The beauty industry was buzzing about our innovative sustainable packaging and breakthrough formulas. "Mrs. Sullivan," my assistant appeared. "The Wall Street Journal reporter is here for the interview, and Mrs. Rose is hosting a competitive beauty industry tea at the plaza." I smiled. Victoria's attempts to maintain her influence had become increasingly desperate. Last week, she tried to organize a boycott of our products among her social circle. Their daughters, however, were already waitlisted for our new collection. Who attended her tea? I asked, curious. Mostly retired socialites. The major beauty editors all canceled. They are here for your interview instead. The journal reporter was young and sharp, armed with market research and pointed questions. "Your first quarter results are impressive," she began. "But there's talk about friction with the Rose family legacy." "Legacy is meaningful only when it evolves," I replied. "We're honoring the brand's heritage by ensuring its future." "And your husband?" "Sources say he's working in product development now." As if on cue, James appeared at my door, wearing a lab coat instead of his usual designer suit. "The new serum trials are showing promising results," he reported, then noticed the reporter. "Sorry, I'll come back." "No, stay," I invited. "Tell us about the trials." For the next 10 minutes, James expertly detailed the scientific advances we'd made, his eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. The reporter took rapid notes. "You seem very different from the James Rose who used to appear in society pages," she observed. "Because I'm finally doing something real," he answered, "not just playing a role in my mother's script." After the reporter left, James lingered. "Mother's hosting another tea today." "I know. She's invited every beauty editor in Manhattan. And they're all here instead, covering our actual news." I handed him the latest market reports. "How does it feel to earn attention rather than inherit it?" He studied the numbers. "Better. Much better." Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Victoria's voice carried through the office. "This is still my name on the building." I opened my door to find her confronting our new head of marketing, a brilliant strategist who'd never set foot in a country club. "Actually," I stepped in, "it's Sullivan Rose now, and we're in a meeting with Vogue in 10 minutes." Victoria adjusted her Hermes scarf. "I'm here to discuss the holiday collection. Our traditional customers are being surveyed about their actual preferences," I cut in, "not just their social obligations. They won't accept these changes." I pulled up our sales data. They already have. Our new sustainable luxury line has a 50,000 person waitlist. Traditional enough for you? Victoria turned to James, her last resort. "Darling, surely you see what she's doing to our family's reputation." James looked up from his research notes. "She's saving it, Mom. Our old formulas were dated. Our marketing was stale. I've learned more about real business in 3 months than I did in 3 years of following your social calendar." Victoria's face crumpled slightly. "The governor's wife is attending my tea today, while the governor's daughter is interviewing for our management training program," I countered. "Times change, Victoria. Either adapt or become irrelevant." After she left, James shook his head. She'll never accept this, will she? She doesn't have to. Success speaks louder than social connections. Later that afternoon, I reviewed the final designs for our holiday collection. Modern, sustainable packaging replaced the dated gold and pearl motif Victoria had clung to for decades. The influencer campaign is ready, my marketing director reported. We've paired traditional luxury consumers with Gen Z sustainability advocates. The contrast is powerful. Victoria will hate it. Victoria is not our demographic anymore. The next morning, Women's Wear Daily ran a feature. Sullivan Rose: How a Beauty Empire Evolved from Social Status to Sustainable Success. Victoria's response came in the society pages. Traditional luxury under siege. The death of elegance. But the numbers told a different story. Our stock price had doubled. Celebrity waitlists for our products grew daily. Even Victoria's closest friends were quietly ordering our new collection. James found me reviewing expansion plans that evening. Mother's organizing a traditional luxury summit next month, he said, amused. To preserve heritage brands. While we're opening our sustainable research facility and launching in 3 new markets, I showed him the plans. Want to lead the Asia expansion. He looked surprised. You trust me with that? The James who earned his way through R&D? Yes. The James who relied on his last name? Never. He studied the proposal carefully. I'll need to learn Mandarin. Already arranged for lessons. Mother will say I'm abandoning our New York society obligations. While you're building a billion-dollar market, somehow, I think you'll survive the social scandal. As we worked late into the night, planning the future of the company, I thought about Victoria probably plotting her next society event, unaware that tomorrow we'd announce our international expansion. Unaware that with each innovation we launched, each market we entered, each sustainable initiative we championed, her version of luxury became more obsolete. The next morning, my new portrait was installed in the lobby, not a static oil painting like Victoria's, but a digital display alternating between images of our research labs, sustainability initiatives, and global reach. Sometimes, the best way to handle someone who calls you childish is to grow beyond their limited vision. I adjusted my designer suit in the mirror of my corner office at Harrison & Wallace, the most prestigious law firm in Boston. The invitation to tonight's Massachusetts Legal Excellence Awards sat on my desk, alongside a far more interesting document, the partnership agreement naming me the youngest managing partner in the firm's history. My phone buzzed with another message from my mother-in-law, Margaret Wallace. Diana, darling, there's still time to cancel this gauche display. A true professional doesn't need to celebrate their achievements so publicly. I smiled, remembering all her public celebrations of her son Michael's minor victories, the lavish party when he passed the bar on his second attempt, the society page spreads when he made junior partner in his father's firm, and the constant reminders that he was Wallace blood and the natural heir to his father's legacy. If only she knew. Mrs. Harrison. My assistant Sarah poked her head in. Mr. Wallace Sr. wants to see you. I kept my maiden name professionally, a decision that had always irritated Margaret. Now it would make tonight's announcement even more satisfying. Robert Wallace Sr.'s office was a testament to old money and older power. He sat behind his mahogany desk, looking tired but satisfied. Everything's set for tonight, he said, pushing a folder toward me. The board's unanimous decision, the press release, everything. Does Michael suspect anything? My son. Robert snorted. He's too busy believing his mother's promises that he's next in line, just like she's been promising since he was in law school. I'd always appreciated Robert's clear-eyed view of his son's capabilities. It was why he'd approached me 6 months ago about taking over the firm. While Margaret had been busy planning Michael's ascension, Robert had been watching me win impossible cases and bring in millions in new clients. Margaret's been quite successful in her campaign against your award ceremony, he noted, amusement in his voice. Half the firm's junior partners have declined to attend. Following her lead, I agreed, just like they've always done. Until tomorrow, he smiled. When they realize who's really in charge. My phone buzzed again. Michael this time. Mom's right, honey. This ceremony thing is a bit much. Maybe we should just have a quiet dinner instead. 3 years of marriage and he still couldn't make a decision without his mother's input. Everything's paid for, I texted back. And the firm's being on her too. But do you have to give a speech? Mom says it seems attention-seeking. I put my phone away. Tonight would answer all their questions. The ceremony venue was elegant but modern, much like the changes I planned for the firm. Margaret had called it nouveau riche when I booked it. Tonight, she and her society friends would be conspicuously absent, along with my husband, who decided to attend his mother's charity dinner instead. Their loss, Robert said, joining me at the entrance, ready to make history. Born ready. The room filled with Boston's legal elite. Those who'd ignored Margaret's social pressure sat in rows, along with clients, judges, and press. My team, the hungry young lawyers I'd mentored and promoted, occupied 2 full tables. The awards began. I watched Margaret's chosen partners squirm as my name was called repeatedly. Best corporate strategy, most innovative practice, highest client retention. Then came the moment we planned for. And now the host announced a special presentation from Robert Wallace Sr., managing partner of Harrison and Wallace. Robert took the stage, his presence commanding silence. Tonight, I'm not just here to celebrate excellence. I'm here to announce the future. The room quieted, even the waiters stopped moving. For 40 years, I've led Harrison and Wallace. Tonight, I'm announcing my successor. My phone lit up with messages from Margaret. Robert's making the announcement en vogue. But Michael isn't even there. The future of law isn't about legacy, Robert continued. It's about excellence, innovation, actual results. That's why the board and I are proud to announce our new managing partner. The doors burst open. Michael and Margaret stood there, slightly out of breath. They must have broken every speed limit getting here from her dinner. "Dad," Michael called out. "Sorry we're late for my announcement." "Diana Harrison," Robert finished just as my name and photo appeared on the giant screens. The room erupted in applause. My team jumped to their feet, cheering. They'd known, of course. They'd been helping me prepare for months. Margaret's face went from triumphant to shocked to furious in seconds. Michael just looked confused. Additionally, Robert continued over the applause. "Diana has led the acquisition of 3 smaller firms, making Harrison and Wallace the largest corporate law practice in New England." More applause, more shocked faces, more fury from Margaret. I took the stage, accepting the partnership agreement from Robert. "Thank you," I began. "They say success is the best revenge. But I disagree. Success isn't about revenge. It's about vision. About seeing what needs to change and having the courage to change it." My eyes met Margaret's. Some people mistake confidence for attention-seeking. They confuse celebration with boasting. They believe leadership is about bloodlines rather than results. Michael was still standing in the doorway, his mother's hand gripping his arm. "Harrison and Wallace isn't just a law firm," I continued. "It's a legacy of excellence, and under my leadership, that legacy will be based on merit, not marriage. On results, not relationships." The message was clear to everyone in the room. Margaret's power base, built on social connections and family ties, was over. "To those who chose not to attend tonight," I said, glancing at the half-empty tables of junior partners, "your absence has been noted. To those who believed excellence should be celebrated," I raised my glass to my team, "your futures just got brighter." As I left the stage, Robert whispered, "Margaret's already calling board members." "Let her," I replied. "The votes are in, the contracts are signed, and tomorrow's press release is already scheduled." Michael finally approached, his face a mix of emotions. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have kept it from your mother?" His silence was answer enough. Margaret appeared behind him, her society smile firmly in place. "Diana, darling. How clever of you, but surely you understand, the Wallace name is exactly that," I interrupted. "A name. One that's been trading on reputation rather than results for too long." "I am still the wife of the founding partner," she hissed. "Ex-wife," Robert corrected, joining us. "As of last month's divorce settlement, which you might have noticed if you've been paying attention to anything besides undermining Diana." Margaret's perfect mask cracked. "You planned this? All of it? The ceremony, the announcements?" "No, Margaret. You planned this. Every time you dismissed my achievements. Every time you called me attention-seeking. Every time you taught Michael to depend on his name instead of his abilities." I turned to my husband. "We should talk. About the firm, about our marriage, about your future. But not here. Not now." As I walked away to rejoin my celebrating team, I heard Margaret's sharp intake of breath. She'd finally noticed the screens, still displaying my image with the caption, Diana Harrison, Managing Partner, Harrison Wallace and Associates. Then was gone. Just like her influence. Sometimes, the best response to being called attention-seeking is to do something truly worth paying attention to. The morning after my announcement, I arrived at the office to find Margaret sitting in my new corner office, wearing her trademark Channel suit and disapproving expression. That was quite a performance last night, she said, examining her manicured nails. But we both know this won't last. I set my briefcase down and took my seat behind the massive desk, Robert's old desk, now mine. The partnership agreement and board votes suggest otherwise. Darling, she leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. Do you really think our clients will accept this upheaval? The Wallace name means something in Boston. You mean like the Caldwell account? I pulled up an email on my computer screen. The one that just doubled their retainer after last night's announcement. Or the Mitchell Group, who called at 6 a.m. to move all their legal work to us. Her smile faltered slightly. Michael will fight this. With what evidence of competence? I opened a folder. His case win rate is 42%. Mine is 89%. His billable hours barely meet minimum requirements. Mine are triple that. His client retention. I smiled. Well, let's not embarrass him further. Numbers aren't everything, she snapped. Relationships are exactly why Robert chose me. I stood up. Speaking of relationships, Michael's waiting in the conference room. We're discussing his future with the firm. Would you like to join us? She followed me down the hallway where whispers and glances trailed us. The junior partners who had skipped my ceremony were suddenly very interested in their shoes. Michael sat in the conference room looking like he hadn't slept. Robert was there too, along with the head of HR. Let's make this simple, I began, sliding documents across the table. Michael has two options. Option 1. Accept a position as a regular partner, with clear performance metrics and quarterly reviews. No special treatment. No mommy's intervention. Margaret's face reddened. How dare. Option 2, I continued, take the generous severance package and start fresh at another firm. One where his last name might still mean something. Michael stared at the papers. You're my wife. I'm the managing partner, and you need to decide if you're ready to be a real lawyer instead of a legacy admission. This is ridiculous, Margaret interrupted. Robert, you can't allo. I already have, Robert said quietly. Diana's first act as managing partner has my full support. It's time for real merit to matter more than family connections. Michael looked between his parents, lost without their usual script. You have until tomorrow to decide, I said, standing. Oh, and Margaret? The board meeting this afternoon has been moved to the downtown office. Don't bother coming, you're no longer on the board. I've been on that board for 30 years. And now you're not. Funny how things change. I left them there, heading to my first partnership meeting. My team had prepared presentations on modernizing our practice areas, implementing new technology, and establishing a proper mentorship program. By lunch, my phone was flooded with messages. Michael had apparently fled to his mother's house. Society friends were choosing sides. The legal community was buzzing with speculation. Sarah appeared with coffee and a stack of messages. Mrs. Harrison, the Boston Legal Journal wants an interview. And Mr. Wallace, Michael. He's in the lobby. I found him by the elevators, looking uncharacteristically determined. I'll take option 1, he said without preamble. Are you sure? Your mother won't approve. He swallowed hard. That's kind of the point. I've been thinking all night. About law school, about my career, about us. Mom always said I was destined to run the firm, but I never earned it, did I? No, I said softly. You didn't. Show me how. His voice strengthened. Show me how to be the lawyer you saw potential in 3 years ago. The one who made you agree to a second date even after that horrible first one my mother orchestrated. I studied him carefully. No special treatment. No running to mommy when cases get tough. No trading on the Wallace name. I know, I want to earn my place. Really earn it. Okay, I handed him a file. Start with this pro bono case. Show me what you can do without your safety net. He took the file, then hesitated. And us? Our marriage? That depends on whether you're ready to be a partner in more than just name. As he walked away, Robert appeared beside me. Think he'll make it? Without Margaret's interference? Maybe. He's not stupid, just badly trained. Speaking of Margaret, he smiled, she's called an emergency tea party with her society friends. Apparently, you're the topic of discussion. I checked my watch. Let them talk. I have a firm to run. The afternoon flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, client calls, and strategy sessions. My team was already implementing changes, modern case management software, flexible work arrangements, performance-based promotions. At 6, Sarah brought in one last message, from Mrs. Wallace. The note was short. You've made a powerful enemy, dear. I built this society. Remember that. I penned my response. I'm not interested in society, Margaret. I'm interested in justice. Remember that. Looking out over Boston's skyline from my office, I thought about power, real power. Not the kind Margaret wielded at tea parties, but the kind earned through excellence, not inherited through marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Filed my first independent motion today. Judge granted it. Did it myself, no family name dropping. I smiled. Good start, keep going. Another text, this one from Robert. Margaret's trying to organize a client exodus. So far, she's managed to convince exactly none of them to leave. Because they care about results, not afternoon tea, I replied. The next morning, the Boston Legal Journal ran their story. Harrison and Wallace modernizes, new managing partner signals era of merit over legacy. Margaret's society page response came a day later. Traditional values under attack in legal community. I pinned both articles to my office wall. A reminder that change never comes without resistance and that true success isn't about being liked. It's about being respected. As I prepared for my first official board meeting as managing partner, I looked at the 2 articles again. Margaret had taught me an invaluable lesson. If people are going to talk anyway, give them something worth talking about. 6 months after taking control of the firm, I sat in the newly renovated conference room, reviewing our quarterly results. Profits up 40%. Client retention at 95%. 20 new associates hired based purely on merit, not connections. Mrs. Harrison. Sarah appeared at the door. The Chronicle is here for the profile piece, and Mrs. Wallace is in the lobby. Perfect timing, as always. I found Margaret holding court near the reception desk, surrounded by her remaining society loyalists. She'd spent the past few months trying to orchestrate my downfall, only to watch her influence wane with every successful change I implemented. Margaret, I greeted her. The society pages are down the street. This is a law firm. Can't a mother check on her son? She smiled tightly. Though I hardly recognize him anymore. Working late, skipping charity galas. You mean actually practicing law? Yes, he is. As if on cue, Michael emerged from the elevator, suit slightly rumpled, carrying a stack of case files. He'd won his first major case last week, without using his last name once. Mom, he looked surprised. I can't talk now. I have court in an hour. But the Vandermeer's garden party is less important than my client's freedom. He turned to me. The judge granted our motion. DA's offering a deal. Good work. Keep me posted. Margaret watched our exchange with narrowed eyes. What have you done to him? Given him a chance to earn his own reputation. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an interview. The reporter from the Chronicle was waiting in my office, young, sharp, not easily impressed by old money names. Mrs. Harrison, your changes at the firm have been controversial, she began. Mrs. Wallace has been quite vocal about the destruction of traditional values. Traditional values like nepotism and country club connections. I smiled. I prefer modern values like competence and innovation. And your husband? Sources say there was tension. My husband is discovering who he is without his mother's script. Ask him yourself, after he wins his case today. The interview continued but was interrupted by a commotion outside. Margaret's voice carried through the door. These changes are destroying everything we built. The new dress code, the flexible hours, the diversity. I opened my door to find Margaret confronting our newest partner, a brilliant lawyer who had risen from public defense work. Someone who'd never been invited to her garden parties. Is there a problem? I asked quietly. This person claims to be a partner, Margaret sputtered. Harvard Law, 15 years of experience, 90% win rate, I listed off. Unlike some former partners who mainly specialized in long lunches and family connections. The reporter was scribbling frantically. You're turning this prestigious firm into the most successful corporate law practice in New England? I finished. Current numbers suggest so. Margaret drew herself up. The governor's wife is hosting a gala next week. You'll find yourself distinctly uninvited. I declined last month. Too busy breaking our quarterly revenue records. After she stormed out, the reporter turned to me. You've made powerful social enemies. I've made powerful legal allies. Which do you think matters more in a law firm? Later that evening, Michael found me in my office, still working. We won, he said simply. No deals. Full acquittal. On the actual evidence. Congratulations. Your first major win. Completely on merit. He sat down heavily. Mom's furious, says I'm betraying the family legacy. And what do you think? I think, he paused. I think I'm finally building my own legacy, and it feels better than borrowing hers. I reached into my desk and pulled out an envelope. Perfect timing then. He opened it, eyes widening. Partnership track? Real partnership track. Based entirely on your last 6 months' performance, no name required. Diana, he looked up. Thank you for seeing what I could be instead of what Mom made me. You did the work. Speaking of which, I handed him another file. Ready for a real challenge? The next morning, the Chronicle article came out. Harrison and Wallace. Merit rises as old guard falls. Margaret's response was predictable. Another society page screed about tradition and values. But this time, hardly anyone was reading her column. They were too busy reading about our latest court victories, our innovative practice areas, our merit-based promotion system. Robert stopped by my office, looking pleased. Board meeting in an hour. Quarterly reports are impressive. Even better, I handed him a document. Michael's case yesterday, full acquittal, brilliant defense strategy, all his own work. My son, Robert smiled, finally becoming a real lawyer. No thanks to your ex-wife. Margaret's having tea with the governor's wife right now, probably plotting your social downfall. I laughed. Well, I'm plotting our expansion into international markets. Funny how priorities differ. Later, at home, Michael and I shared a quiet dinner, both tired from actual work, not social maneuvering. Mom's latest party is tonight, he mentioned. First one we've both missed. Regrets? He thought for a moment. No, I like who I'm becoming, who we're becoming. Even without the social throne. We're building something better than a social empire, he smiled. We're building justice. I thought about Margaret probably holding court at her party right now, unaware that tomorrow we'd announce our international expansion, unaware that her social influence diminished with every successful case we won, every innovation we implemented, every merit-based promotion we celebrated. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't in destroying what others built. It's in building something so much better that their creation becomes irrelevant. And we were just getting started. I never thought I'd have to choose between my dying father and my husband, but my mother-in-law, Barbara, made sure I did. The call came at 3 a.m. Dad had suffered a massive stroke, and the doctors didn't expect him to make it through the week. I was booking flights to Seattle when my husband David's phone started ringing. Mom, it's the middle of the night, David mumbled into his phone. His eyes widened as he listened. No, you can't come over right now. What? Sarah's father. How did you even? He looked at me apologetically as his mother's voice grew loud enough for me to hear her shrill demands. Within 20 minutes, Barbara was pounding on our front door, still wearing her silk pajamas under her designer coat. Her perfectly styled gray hair seemed untouched by the late hour, as if she slept with it shellacked in place. Sarah, you cannot leave right now, she announced, pushing past me into our living room. David's big presentation is in 3 days. He needs his wife here to support him. I gripped my phone, fighting to keep my voice steady. Barbara, my father is dying. I have to go. Don't be dramatic. Everyone's father dies eventually, but David's career, his future, that's happening now. She turned to her son. Tell her, David. Tell her how important this presentation is to your promotion. David shifted uncomfortably, looking between us. Mom, it's her father. Exactly, it's just her father. You are her husband. The Bible says a wife should cleave to her husband. Leaving now would be abandoning your marriage vows. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. In the 4 years I'd been married to David, Barbara had tried to control every aspect of our lives, from where we lived to what we ate. But this was a new low. I'm going to Seattle, I said firmly. David understands. His presentation will be fine. Barbara's face hardened. If you get on that plane, don't expect to come back to this house. I won't have my son married to someone so selfish. Mom. David finally found his voice. You can't say that. But Barbara was on a roll. She grabbed my hastily packed suitcase and started pulling out clothes. I raised you better than to let your wife walk all over you, David. A good wife puts her husband first. Always. Sarah has never understood that. As my clothes scattered across the floor, something fell from between the folds of my sweater. A weathered envelope with my name written in my father's shaky handwriting. I've been carrying it for 2 weeks since his last letter arrived. Barbara snatched it up before I could reach it. What's this? More manipulation from your family. Give that back, I said, my voice deadly quiet. That's private. Nothing's private in a marriage. She started to tear open the envelope. Mom, stop. David tried to grab it from her, but she already pulled out the letter. Her eyes skimmed the first few lines, and I watched the color drain from her face. The paper trembled in her hands. This is impossible, she whispered. I knew exactly what she was reading. Dad's last letter contained more than just his loving words to his daughter. It included a confession about a night 30 years ago, when a young Barbara Matthews had shown up at his law office, desperate for help. Keep reading, I said softly. The part about what really happened to those adoption papers might interest you. David looked confused. What adoption papers? Barbara crumpled the letter in her fist. This is lies. All lies. Is it? I pulled out my phone, showing her the email I'd received last week, because I have copies of everything Dad kept, including the original documents you asked him to destroy, the ones proving you adopted David when he was 3 days old. The silence in the room was deafening. David stared at his mother, realization dawning on his face. Mom? Barbara's perfect facade cracked. Tears smeared her expensive mascara. I did it for you, she whispered. Your father, your real father, he would have ruined everything. I had to protect you. By lying to me my entire life? David's voice shook. By giving you a proper family name. The Matthews legacy. I made you who you are. I picked up my scattered clothes, carefully folding each piece back into my suitcase. My father kept your secret for 30 years, Barbara. He helped you create a new identity, bury the old records, start fresh. He never asked for anything in return. And now that he's dying, you want to stop his daughter from saying goodbye. Barbara sank onto our couch, her shoulders shaking. The crumpled letter fell from her hands. David picked it up, smoothing it carefully. I'm going to Seattle, I said, zipping my suitcase. And when I get back, we can all sit down and talk about everything that's in that letter, including the truth about David's biological parents. Don't, Barbara pleaded. Please. But David was already reading, his face growing paler with each line. Mom, what did you do? I left them there, Barbara's sobs following me to the door. My father had always taught me that the truth has a way of coming out, usually at the moment you least expect it. As I got into my waiting Uber, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Go be with your dad. I'll handle things here. And Sarah, thank you for showing me what real family loyalty looks like. I looked back at our house, where Barbara's perfectly coordinated world was unraveling one secret at a time. Soon she would have to face the consequences of her choices, but right now, I had a plane to catch. My father was waiting, and this time, nothing would stop me from reaching him. The airport was quiet at this early hour, but my mind was racing. Dad's letter had been my protection against Barbara's manipulation for weeks, but I never wanted to use it this way. As I settled into my seat on the plane, I pulled out the other letter Dad had sent me, the private one that Barbara hadn't seen, the one that explained why he'd finally decided to tell the truth after all these years. Sometimes he'd written, keeping a secret to protect someone becomes its own kind of cruelty. Your mother-in-law needs to face her past, and your husband deserves to know who he really is. Just promise me you'll be gentle with the truth, Sarah. It's a powerful weapon. I closed my eyes as the plane took off, hoping I'd handled things the way Dad would have wanted. But this was just the beginning. When I returned home, we would all have to deal with the aftershocks of Barbara's carefully buried secrets. The truth about David's adoption was just the tip of the iceberg. Dad's letter contained so much more, secrets that would shake the Matthews family to its core. But first, I had to say goodbye to the man who had taught me that real love means telling the truth, no matter how much it hurts. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I followed the nurse to Dad's room. I made it just in time. He was still conscious, though barely. When he saw me, his face lit up with a weak smile that made my heart break. "My Sarah," he whispered, his voice raspy. "You came." "Of course I came, Dad." I took his hand, trying not to flinch at how frail it felt. Nothing could have stopped me. He squeezed my fingers softly. "Barbara tried, didn't she?" I nodded, fighting back tears. "She found your letter." "Ah," he closed his eyes briefly. "Then it's begun. David is reading everything right now." "Dad, why didn't you tell me sooner about what Barbara did? About her coming to you all those years ago?" Dad shifted in his hospital bed, each movement clearly causing him pain. "It wasn't my secret to tell, sweetheart. Not until I knew." "Knew what?" "That she was going to try to control you the same way she controlled everyone else. When you married David, I prayed she had changed. But then I started hearing about her interference, her manipulation." He paused, catching his breath. "The way she tried to isolate you both." My phone buzzed. Another text from David. "Mom finally told me everything. About my real parents. About what she made your dad do. I'm so sorry, Sarah." Dad saw the tears I was trying to hold back. "Read it to me," he said gently. I shook my head. "You need to rest." "What I need," he said with a hint of his old firmness, "is to know I did the right thing." "Read it." I read David's text aloud, then the string of messages that followed. How Barbara had finally broken down and admitted the truth, not just about the adoption, but about David's biological parents. How they hadn't abandoned him as Barbara had claimed. How she used her family's money and influence to manipulate a young, struggling couple into giving up their child. She thought she was protecting him, Dad said softly, from a life of poverty, from the scandal of his birth. Barbara Matthews couldn't bear the thought of her only child being born to a teenage mother and a father working as a mechanic. So she bought him? Like he was some sort of accessory. She gave them $50,000 and a promise that David would have every advantage in life. Dad's voice grew weaker. "I helped make it legal, changed records, buried paperwork. It wasn't right, but she convinced me it was best for the child." A nurse came in to check Dad's vitals, frowning at his dropping oxygen levels. I knew our time was running short. "Dad, there's more in that letter, isn't there? Things Barbara hasn't admitted yet." He nodded slightly. "In my desk at home, there's a safe. Combination is your birthday. Everything's there. The original adoption papers, the payments, and the letters from David's real parents. They wrote to him every year on his birthday. Barbara intercepted them all." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. The message made my blood run cold. "This is Thomas Cooper. Barbara Matthews told me you found out about my son. Please, is David okay?" Dad saw my expression. "His father," he whispered. "Still working at that same garage in Portland. Never left in case David ever came looking." The nurse returned with a doctor. They spoke in hushed tones about declining stats and making him comfortable. I felt the precious minutes slipping away. "Dad, what do I do? David's whole world is falling apart. His mother isn't who we thought she was. His real parents are still out there, wanting to know him. How do I help him through this?" Dad's eyes were getting heavy, but he managed a small smile. "The same way you've helped him all along. With truth and love." Barbara built her life on lies, trying to create the perfect family. But real family, real love, it's messy and complicated and honest. His breathing became more labored. The doctor stepped forward with a concerned look. "One more thing," Dad whispered. "In the safe, there's a trust fund. I've been saving. Every payment Barbara made to keep me quiet. It belongs to David now. His mother's money should go to him." "Mr. Harrison," the doctor said firmly, "you need to rest now." Dad squeezed my hand one last time. "Tell David, tell him I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. And Sarah, I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Those were his last coherent words. He slipped into unconsciousness an hour later, and by midnight he was gone. I sat by his bed until dawn, thinking about families built on lies and the cost of keeping secrets. When I finally checked my phone again, there were dozens of messages, from David struggling to process the truth about his origins, from Barbara alternating between threats and pleading, and more messages from Thomas Cooper, asking for just one chance to explain. But it was the last message that made me catch my breath. A photo of a woman with David's same gentle eyes, holding a birthday cake with a single candle. The caption read, "This was David's first birthday cake. We made one every year, hoping someday he'd know how much we loved him. I'm his birth mother, Angela. Please, can we talk?" I stared at the photo, seeing all the features David had inherited, the shape of his smile, the curve of his cheeks. For 30 years, Barbara had hidden this from him, had stolen not just his history, but his choice to know where he came from. As the sun rose over the hospital, I knew Dad had been right. The truth would hurt, but lies had already done far more damage. It was time for healing to begin, no matter how difficult the process might be. I gathered my things, ready to head back to the house where Dad's safe held the key to unlocking the rest of this story. Barbara's carefully constructed world of perfection was about to crumble completely, but from its ruins, maybe something real could finally grow. The drive to Dad's house felt surreal. Every corner held memories, but now each one was tinged with the weight of secrets he carried. In his study, the safe opened with a soft click. My birthday, just as he'd said. Inside, decades of carefully preserved documents told a story Barbara Matthews never wanted revealed. Birth certificates, adoption papers, and a stack of letters bound with faded blue ribbon. But it was the bank statements that made my hands shake. For 30 years, Barbara had paid my father $5,000 every month to maintain her secret. He'd invested every penny, building a trust fund that now held over $2 million. Attached was a note in Dad's handwriting. For David, the truth comes with a price. This money was earned through silence. Let it now speak volumes. My phone rang. It was David. "I met them," he said without preamble. His voice was raw. "My biological parents. They've been living in Portland all this time, just 3 hours away. Angela, my birth mother, she works at a library. And Thomas, he still has the first toy car he was going to give me." I clutched the stack of letters. "Are you okay?" "No. Yes. I don't know." He took a shaky breath. "Mom, Barbara, she's completely lost it. When she found out I contacted them, she threatened to disinherit me, to tell everyone I'm having a mental breakdown. She's already called the family lawyer. David, there's something else you need to know. About the money she paid my father." As I explained the trust fund, David went quiet. Finally, he said, "She bought their silence, and then she bought your father's. He saved it all for you. Every penny. I don't want her money." "Then use it to build something new," I suggested. "Your birth parents started a scholarship fund for teen mothers. Did you know that? After losing you, they wanted to help other young parents keep their babies." The silence stretched between us. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Warm, hesitant voices so different from Barbara's calculated tones. "They're not perfect," David said finally. "Angela was 16 when she had me. Thomas dropped out of high school to work full-time. They're nothing like the parents Mom wanted for me. But Sarah, they kept every birthday card they wrote me. 30 years of cards I never got to read. Do you want me to bring you the letters from the safe?" "Yes. No, I don't know if I can handle more truth right now." He paused. "How did your dad do it? Keep this secret for so long?" I looked around Dad's study, at the photos on his walls. Me graduating law school, my wedding day, casual family dinners, moments of truth mixed with carefully held secrets. "I think," I said slowly, "he was waiting for the right time. For when the truth would heal instead of hurt." Is there ever a right time to learn your whole life is built on lies? Maybe not. But there's always time to build something new, something real. David was quiet for a moment. Angela asked if we could have dinner together. All of us, even Barbara, if she's willing. She says forgiveness is harder than anger, but it's worth it. I thought about Barbara, about the desperate young woman who'd gone to my father's office 30 years ago, determined to create the perfect family, about all the walls she'd built to protect her lies, walls that were now crumbling. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm going to have dinner with my parents, all of them." And then he took a deep breath. "Then I'm going to read those letters. Will you be there with me?" "Of course." "Sarah, I'm sorry about your dad. He was a good man, even with the secrets." He was. I looked at the trust fund documents one last time before sealing them in an envelope. He taught me that family isn't about perfect records or polished appearances. It's about love, even when it's messy, especially when it's messy. As I locked up Dad's study for the last time, I thought about Barbara. She tried to buy the perfect family, but in doing so, she'd almost lost the real one she had. Maybe now, with all the secrets exposed, she finally learned what my father had known all along, that true love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be true. The hospital corridor felt familiar, but not in the way it should have. For 10 years, I'd walked these halls as Dr. Emma Carter, one of the country's leading oncologists. Now I was just Mrs. James Wilson, desperately trying to reach my husband's room while his mother played gatekeeper. "He's resting," Margaret Wilson said, her designer heels planted firmly in front of room 405. "The last thing James needs is you hovering around, disrupting his peace." I gripped my medical bag tighter. "Margaret, I'm his wife." For now, her perfectly lined lips curved into a cruel smile. "Though once he recovers, we'll discuss how your inadequacies as a spouse contributed to his collapse." The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so tragic. 6 months ago, I'd given up my position at this very hospital to appease Margaret's demands that I be a proper wife to James. She had never known about my previous career. I'd used my maiden name professionally, and James had agreed to keep my background private to maintain peace. Now, as my husband lay fighting the same rare form of lymphoma I'd spent years researching, I was forced to stand in the hallway like a stranger. "Mrs. Wilson?" A young nurse approached, clutching a chart. "Dr. Henderson would like to speak with the family about Mr. Wilson's treatment options." Margaret straightened her channel jacket. "Excellent. As his mother and primary medical proxy." "I'm his wife," I interrupted. "I'll be making the medical decisions." "You?" Margaret scoffed. "What do you know about complex medical treatments? You can barely manage the household budget." If she only knew I'd written 3 of the papers Dr. Henderson would likely reference in his treatment plan. "Mrs. Wilson." Dr. Henderson appeared, looking exhausted. I recognized the look in his eyes. It was the same one I'd worn when facing impossible odds. "Both of you, please come with me." In the consultation room, he spread out James's test results. "The cancer is aggressive, and it's not responding to standard treatments. There's an experimental protocol we'd like to try." "But—" "Cost is no object," Margaret interrupted. "The Wilson family has extensive resources." "It's not about money," Dr. Henderson said quietly. "The treatment is still in trials. Only one doctor has successfully administered it, and she's no longer practicing." My heart stopped. He was talking about my research, my treatment protocol, the one I developed just before leaving medicine. "What doctor?" Margaret demanded. "We'll find her. Pay whatever she wants." Dr. Henderson shook his head. "Dr. Emma Carter. She left the field 6 months ago. No one knows where she is." I closed my eyes, remembering the day I walked away. James had begged me to tell his mother the truth about my career, but I'd chosen peace over pride. Now that choice might cost him his life. "There has to be someone else," Margaret insisted, "someone qualified." The word qualified snapped something inside me. I opened my medical bag and pulled out my credentials, my research papers, and most importantly, the USB drive containing the complete treatment protocol. "There is someone qualified," I said, spreading the documents on the table. "Dr. Emma Carter never left. She just changed her name when she got married. Kier's son." The color drained from Margaret's face as she stared at my medical license, my published research, the awards and accolades she'd never known about. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You're a housewife. You're board certified in oncology, with a specialization in rare lymphomas." I turned to Dr. Henderson, whose mouth had fallen open. "And I can administer the treatment. I developed it." "You've been lying this whole time." Margaret's voice rose. "Deceiving my son." "James knows exactly who I am," I said quietly. "He was my patient before he was my husband. That's how we met." Dr. Henderson was already reviewing my research. This is groundbreaking. But why did you leave?" I looked directly at Margaret. Because someone convinced my husband that a wife's place was in the home, not the hospital. That a proper marriage meant giving up my career. Margaret sank into a chair, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. I never knew. No, you didn't. You never asked. You just assumed I was the unqualified gold digger you wanted to see. I gathered my credentials. Now I'm going to my husband's room to begin his treatment. You can either help me save his life, or continue standing in my way. Your choice. She didn't move for a long moment. Then, slowly, she pulled out her phone. I'll call the board. Tell them we found Dr. Carter. No need, Dr. Henderson said, already writing orders. As long as she has privileges here, Dr. Carter, Mrs. Wilson, can begin immediately. I left them there, walking quickly to James's room. He was awake, his face pale against the hospital pillows. They told me it was bad, he said weakly, that only one doctor could help. It is bad. I took his hand, feeling the familiar mixture of a doctor's objectivity and a wife's terror. But luckily you married your oncologist. A faint smile crossed his face. Mom knows. She knows. I started preparing the first round of treatment, though I think finding out her despised daughter-in-law is actually a world-renowned cancer specialist might take some processing. I told you we should have told her from the start. No, I said, checking his IV lines. This was better. Now she has to face all her assumptions, all her prejudices. I administered the first dose of my protocol, and she has to watch the housewife she demeaned save her precious son's life. James caught my hand. You didn't give up your career just because of her, did you? I thought about the real reason I left medicine, the secret I still hadn't told anyone. Not even James. We'll talk about that later. Right now, you need to rest while the treatment begins. Through the window, I could see Margaret in the hallway, staring at her phone. Probably Googling Dr. Emma Carter, discovering just who her daughter-in-law really was. But she didn't know everything yet. She didn't know the real reason I developed this particular treatment, or why I walked away at the height of my career. She didn't know about the test results hidden in the bottom of my medical bag, the ones showing that James's cancer wasn't random at all, but genetic, the same mutation that had killed his father 20 years ago. The same mutation Margaret had hidden from everyone, including her son. 3 days into James's treatment, Margaret finally cornered me in the hospital cafeteria. She'd spent those days hovering silently, watching me work, her face growing more strained with each passing hour. I found your research papers, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. All of them, including the one about hereditary lymphoma patterns in the Wilson family line. I set down my coffee. Interesting reading, isn't it? How long have you known? About the genetic link? Since before I married James. I pulled a worn file from my bag. About how you changed Richard's death certificate to hide the true cause of your husband's death? That I discovered 6 months ago. Her hands trembled as she took the file. Inside were the original medical records of James's father, records that showed he died from the same rare cancer now attacking his son. I was protecting him, she whispered. If James knew the cancer ran in his family, he could have been screened earlier, given preventative treatments, had a chance to make informed decisions about his future. My voice was cold. Instead, you let him think his father died in a car accident. I couldn't bear for him to live in fear, always waiting for the cancer to appear. So instead, you let it ambush him. I opened my laptop, showing her my research database. I've tracked this genetic marker through 3 generations of Wilsons. Richard wasn't the first, and James won't be the last, unless we break the cycle. Margaret's perfectly maintained composure cracked. What do you mean? James and I have been trying to have a baby. I watched her face pale. That's why I left medicine. We were going through fertility treatments, and I wanted to focus on starting our family. But now, the baby could inherit it, she whispered. There's a 50% chance, and thanks to your lies, we almost started a family without knowing the risks. I closed my laptop. I developed this treatment protocol specifically for the Wilson genetic mutation. I've been working on it since the day I met James and recognized his family history. Tears slid down Margaret's cheeks, smearing her expensive mascara. Does he know? About his father? Not yet. I've been a little busy saving his life. I gathered my things. But he'll need to know soon, because if this treatment works, we'll need to test every member of the Wilson family, including you. Me? The mutation can be carried by women without activating. You could be a carrier, passing it on to any future grandchildren. I stood up. So you have a choice to make, Margaret. Continue hiding behind your lies, or help me protect this family's future. She grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Wait, there's something you need to know. About Richard's family. Mrs. Wilson. A nurse interrupted us. Your son is asking for you both. We found James sitting up in bed, some color finally returning to his face. The treatment was working, just as I'd hoped. Mom, he said weakly. Emma, I need to tell you something. Margaret gripped the bed rail. James, please rest. I found Dad's real death certificate, he said. Last week, before I collapsed, I was looking for my birth certificate in your study and found it in the safe. The silence in the room was deafening. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at me. Either of you? I was waiting until you were stronger, I said softly. And I was a coward, Margaret whispered. I've always been a coward when it comes to this. James took her hand. Mom, what aren't you telling me? She sank into the chair beside his bed. Your father, he wasn't the first. My brother, your Uncle Michael, who supposedly died in a boating accident, it was this same cancer. And my grandfather. She took a shaky breath. I've watched this disease destroy the men in our family for decades. When your father got sick, I couldn't face it happening again. So you buried the truth, James said, and nearly buried me with it. James, I interrupted gently. The treatment is working. Your numbers are improving every day, but we need to talk about the future, about children. His face fell. The fertility treatments need to be put on hold, I finished, until we can ensure any baby we have won't carry this mutation. There are options, genetic screening, specialized IVF. Which you already researched, he said, managing a weak smile. Because you're not just my wife. You're the brilliant Dr. Carter who's been 10 steps ahead of this disease all along. Margaret stood suddenly. I'll pay for everything. The treatments, the genetic screening, whatever you need. It's the least I can do after all I've done. I looked at this woman who'd made my life hell for 2 years, who tried to force me into her narrow vision of what a wife should be. She'd never apologize for her behavior, probably never would. But maybe this was her way of making amends. First, I said, we need to test every member of the family, map out exactly how this mutation has spread. Then we can work on preventing it from claiming another generation. I'll make the calls, Margaret said. The whole family will be here by tomorrow. As she left the room, James caught my hand. You knew, didn't you? When you agreed to give up your practice, you were already working on saving me. I knew there was a chance you'd develop the cancer. I didn't know your mother had buried so much evidence. I checked his IV lines. But I never gave up my research. Every day at home, while she thought I was being her perfect housewife, I was actually developing this treatment. My brilliant, sneaky wife. He squeezed my hand. So about that baby we wanted. It will happen. I promised. Just not quite the way we planned. And this time, we'll do it with all the facts. No more secrets. Through the window, I could see Margaret on her phone, presumably calling the family. Her perfect world of denial was crumbling. But maybe something stronger would rise from the ruins, something built on truth, rather than carefully maintained lies. By the end of the week, the hospital's waiting room looked like a Wilson family reunion. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all waiting for their turn to be tested. Each one carried a piece of the puzzle I'd spent years trying to solve. Margaret orchestrated it all with the same precision she'd once used to control our lives. But now, her energy had a different purpose. She worked alongside me, gathering family medical histories, organizing genetic counseling sessions, facing the truth she'd hidden for so long. 37 carriers identified. I told James as he prepared for discharge. Including your cousin Peter's newborn son. Because we caught it early, he'll never have to face what you did. James was packing up the cards and flowers that had filled his room. And Mom? She's a carrier. So are both her sisters. I checked his final test results. But your numbers are perfect. The treatment worked exactly as designed. Thanks to my wife, the secret genius. He pulled me close. So, Dr. Carter Wilson, what's next? Before I could answer, Margaret appeared in the doorway. She looked different somehow, softer, the rigid perfection of her appearance slightly cracked. The genetic counselor wants to talk to us, she said. about the IVF options. James took my hand, ready to plan our future. We followed Margaret to the counseling room where Dr. Peters waited with a stack of files. We've reviewed all the options, she began. With pre-implantation genetic testing, we can ensure any embryos selected won't carry the mutation. And the success rates? Margaret asked, her old commanding tone creeping back. Actually, I interrupted. I've been doing some additional research. I pulled out my laptop, showing them the data I compiled. By combining the treatment protocol I developed with preventative therapy, we might be able to do more than just screen embryos. We might be able to correct the mutation. Dr. Peters leaned forward, intrigued. Gene therapy? But that's years away from. Not exactly. I opened another file. While everyone thought I was playing housewife, I was collaborating with a team in Switzerland. We've had promising results. Margaret stared at the complex medical data scrolling across the screen. All this time, she whispered, while I was criticizing your housekeeping and dinner parties, you were revolutionizing genetic treatment. James grinned. Yeah, my wife's pretty amazing when you're not trying to turn her into someone else. To my shock, Margaret laughed, a real laugh, not her usual polite titter. I was so wrong about you, Emma. About everything. The past doesn't matter, I said, though we all knew it did. What matters is the future, your grandchildren's future. She straightened in her chair, smoothing her skirt in a familiar nervous gesture. Then let's make sure they have one. What do you need? Funding for the research, access to the family's medical records, and, I took a deep breath, your help in convincing the family to participate in the study. Done, she said immediately. All of it. James squeezed my hand. See, miracles do happen. You cured cancer and my mother learned to compromise, all in 1 week. We all laughed, the tension of years finally breaking. Dr. Peters began outlining the treatment plan, but I was watching Margaret. The woman who tried to force me into a mold of her making was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who'd learned that real strength comes from facing the truth, not hiding it. Later, as James and I finally headed home, Margaret stopped us in the parking lot. Emma, she said hesitantly, that dinner party I insisted you host next week. Perhaps we could turn it into a research fundraiser instead. I smiled, only if you let me explain the science to your society friends. Darling, she said, sounding more like her old self, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Heaven help anyone who ever calls you just a housewife again. As we drove home, James looked at me thoughtfully. You know, you could have told everyone the truth years ago, proved her wrong from the start. Sometimes, I said, thinking of all the paths that had led us here, the longest way around is the shortest way home. He laughed. Is that a medical opinion, Dr. Carter? No, I said, reaching for his hand. Just the wisdom of a wife who learned that saving lives, including her own, sometimes means letting go of who people think you should be, and simply being who you are.